afternoon. Thank you, Bishop. I got my Monday evening staff meeting devotional done already. You guys took notes on that one. It was good. Man, good morning. I think I know most, if not all of you guys, but we've met at least once or twice before, and so I'll cut the pleasantries out. We'll jump right to it. Keeping the vision fresh. Let's first just start with what is vision. If you guys had to define what a vision is, what would you say? Doesn't have to be Webster's definition, but in your own term, what would you say?
A layout of the future.
A layout of the future? Okay. Keeping the vision fresh. Okay, we got a layout of the future. What else?
What God has told us to do.
What God has told us to do. Anybody else?
Roadmap.
A roadmap? Okay. That's good.
Goal.
Goals. Hashtag goals.
Destination.
Destination. That's good.
Identity.
Identity. Ooh.
Working to achieve the goals that God had planted.
The goals that God has planted in your heart. Okay.
An open door.
Open door. Let's go.
I'm not going to articulate this just right. A dream, in other words, like what it would look like, what your church would look like if there was nothing standing in your way, what you envision God wanting you to do. There was,
Okay.
if you had all the money you needed, if you had, everything was there for you, that dream.
Okay. Dream accomplished with no obstacles.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way to say it. The shortest way to say it. Anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the obstacles would be there, but what would it look like if you didn't have any obstacles?
Yeah.
Because that would be your ideal.
Andy Stanley wrote about in a book called Visioneering. These are all good, and I think they're pieces of it. I'm going to tell you what he said. He said, vision is a clear picture of what could be, fueled by the conviction that it should be. Vision is a clear mental picture of what could be, fueled by the conviction that it should be. And I like that definition because it pulls from both sides of it. There's the potential that it can happen, but there's the conviction that it should happen. There are a lot of things I think can happen that I don't really care if they do or they don't. There are a lot of things I think should happen that I don't think ever will. But I like the marriage of this could happen and it should, and so I'm going to get to work. That's the vision, this clear mental picture. And I think we all said that, a layout of the future, what God told us to do, a roadmap, goals, the things that are planted in our heart, the destination, identity. I keep laughing at identity because this is humongous. We could probably spend an entire weekend just talking about identity. As pastors, as ministers, as church planners, we need to know who we are.
That's true.
Because if not, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Every time somebody comes with an idea, if you don't know who you are, you don't know your identity, you may think this is God telling you, or the pizza from the night before, or this guy's of the devil. Like, you have no idea what's coming at you. If you don't know your identity, who you are, who God's called you to be, and you are in a world of hurt. Before you do anything else, you need to answer the question, who am I? Who has God called me to be? I don't have time to dig into that, but identity. And I think vision does speak a lot to your identity. My vision is going to be filtered through my identity, through who God's called me to be. So it's going to look different than yours. And that's okay, that's good. But again, you can't just copy and paste somebody else's vision, because that's through their identity. You have to have your own and do the hard work. One of the biggest failures we always talk about or hiccups, church planting, is planting too soon. And I think one of the reasons why is because most of us haven't really worked through who we really are, what our identity is. We step out, we're preaching sermons and singing songs, but our church doesn't have an identity. It doesn't have a course that it's on where you can block everything out and say, hey, that's great, you do that, that's fantastic, you do that, but this is what we're going to do. This is our lane, and we're staying in it. If you want to jump on the bus, there's room. If not, deuces. Like, that work needs to be done. And it's not too late. We planned it 13 years ago, and I'm still answering this question, who is Chris? So if you're already starting, just keep answering it. Who am I? God, who you call me to be? And work hard at that. Anyway, okay, that's freebie. This is what I wanted to get to. Our open door, I like that. A dream accomplished with no obstacles. So that's the could be and should be, what Andrea was saying. Vision is it. I know that Bishop talked about Greek. I have my own version of Greek up here. You probably can't read any of this, so I'll do my best to interpret. This says, vision is a clear picture of what could be, fueled by the conviction that it should be. When it comes to vision, I think there's one character in the Bible that owns it well. Of course, Jesus is chief among them. Nehemiah is a close second to Jesus in this category. So I want to take you to Nehemiah. We're going to read through a couple scriptures, and I want to give you a couple bullets to how to keep the vision fresh. And then we'll do some Q&A, and we'll chat a little bit after. And then I think we're going to take a break, and then Ryan's up after this. So Nehemiah, we're going to skip around, but I would start right in the first chapter, because I think this is where he gets the could be and the should be out of this. Nehemiah chapter 1, first 4 verses. The words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hananiah, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. So, historical context, Israel has been taken away to Babylon. They're in a time where they have a ruler who's very gracious, and he's allowed some to return home. When they come back, Nehemiah's asking, hey, how's it looking? Verse 3, they said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, in verse 4, he says, I sat down and I wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Now, why did he mourn over this? Why did it burden him so much? Because the walls that used to be were here, and now they did not exist. And I think as ministers, we are awakened to this, something's not right in our culture. We see drug addicts on the side of the road, dipping over. We see marriages falling apart, kids out shooting each other. Deep in our heart, and I think in humanity, we all know that that's not right. That something should be done. And it causes a burden inside. Now, what everyone else outside of the church world and ministry does is, hey, the government needs to fix that. DC needs to get on it. We need to legislate some change, but you can't legislate heart change, right? So the church says we need to get to work. And I love Bishop's devotion. We need to get rowing. We need to get moving. How do we do this? So Nehemiah felt the pain. Something's wrong. It needs to be fixed. Let's get to it. Jump to the second chapter, verse 17 of Nehemiah. So he gathers people together. He's got some supplies. It's really awesome. He's pulled people together. He said, I said to them, you see the trouble we are in. So now he's casting the vision. He's showing them what I see as the point leader, the point person. Now he's conveying to the next group, and we're going to talk later on. I think Bishop Reed's going to talk about casting the vision. And so I'm not going to step on any of his material, but he starts casting it. You see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. This is what could be. We could do it. That, you know it should be, now it could be. And we will no longer be in disgrace. Verse 18, second chapter. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me. Remember, the king had sent them with all kinds of supplies. Money follows vision. Money follows vision. You want more resources? Man, you got to find out who you are, what God's called you to, and just don't stop talking about it. People start writing you checks. They want to help, they just don't know how to. If you're out doing it, the resources will come. The king had said to me, they replied, hey, let us start rebuilding. So they began this good work. So they started to the task. Anybody want more volunteers working? Anybody want more people signed up on your dream team? More people come to the church? Vision is the key. We got to cast. If they don't know what they're doing, they're not going to do it. Or worse yet, they'll start doing something that you don't want them to do. You know what I mean? Anyway. We ain't got time to go there. So jump to the fourth chapter. This is what I really want to kind of hone in on. Nehemiah 4, 6th verse. It says, so look, we rebuilt the wall till all of its height had reached, till it reached half its height. For the people worked with all their heart. Half its height. Very key phrase there. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod heard that the repairs of Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. A lot of spiritual warfare happens in church planting. Because you're attacking the kingdom of the enemy, you're establishing the kingdom of God, and they start hearing about it in the spiritual world. Hey, Dexter's up to Ken, he's killing it up there. We need to send some more imps and demons and crazy people up, mask them as good church people. Let's see if they can mess stuff up, They heard about it and they were very angry. Verse 8, they all plotted together. They come and fight against Jerusalem, stir up trouble against it. Verse 9, but we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Verse 10, meanwhile the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall. There's so much rubble we can't rebuild the wall. Verse 11. Also our enemy said, before they know it, see us, we'll be right among them, and we'll kill them and put them into the work. Verse 12. And the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. And so they have outside pressure. Internally, they're worn down. This is actually halfway through the project. It took them 52 days to finish. This is actually day 26. They're tired internally. They're losing the goal. They have outside pressure coming at them. And so Nehemiah has a task. He needs to keep the vision fresh. He needs to remind them of what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so this is what brings us to our point today. Verse 13, he says, stations some people behind the lowest points of the wall, at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. So he immediately jumps to action. So there's some things that you may need to do to plug holes to keep your boat from sinking. You maybe need to remove a sinful volunteer from a position like ASAP. You may need to act decisively. But then he steps back. He says, I need to remind them why. You can't always just do it with words. Sometimes there's action that needs to happen quickly and decisively. Don't be scared of it. But then he says, vision needs to be done. Verse 14 is the key verse of this whole chapter and my talk today. He said, after I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome. And fight for your families, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Verse 15, when our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to our own work. From that day on, half my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, and bows and armors. I love that. The officers posted themselves behind the people of Judah who were rebuilding. Those who carried the materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other. And each of the builders wore a sword at his side. But the man who sounded the trumpet stayed with me. So there's a couple key things that I want to call out here. And I want to assume, this is a terrible assumption, but kind of where we are in the process, I'm going to assume you have a God-given vision that is articulated and you've said it and people know it. Terrible assumption to make, but we don't have time to dig into it. I've been tasked with keeping it fresh. I'm going to assume you have it to keep fresh. So let's assume you have this. Keeping it fresh is difficult. Keeping it up in front of people is difficult. Now, this will still work if you're still forming it and getting who you are as your identity. The process to hearing if it's needs to be restated or stated for the first time is still the same. So we can all still grab something from this. Nehemiah's people got tired, they got worn out, and they were scared. And right in the middle of the project, day 26, halfway through the project, if Nehemiah's people got tired, don't think that your people won't. My people, don't think my people won't. When somebody gets kind of beat up and they send me an email, hey, I just don't think I can serve on this team anymore. My first thought is, come on, man, suck it up. You can hack it. Let's go. Let's chop. Put your big boy pants on. Let's make this thing happen. But how naive of me to just want to whip them into shape. It's a vision issue. Everything that we're doing is going to make us weary and tired. But when you know why, you push through it, right? I mean, Ken got up at 3 a.m., went to work, showered, changed, and then got down here. Like, why? Why would anybody do that? Well, it's because he knows there's people hanging in the balance. There are souls hanging in the balance. And somebody's eternity is going to be changed tomorrow when he steps behind the pulpit and rallies his teams together. That's the why. It's what drives us. It's easy to forget and lose this. Rick Warren calls this actually the Nehemiah principle. If you've ever read Purpose-Driven Church, so day 26 they lost heart and Nehemiah needed to refresh the vision. He said, and so we need to do the same. So every 26 to 30 days, churches need to refresh the vision constantly. That's why every sermon needs to have some vision in it. Vision is not a statement on a wall.
No.
It's who you are. It's your identity. It's what God's called you to. And so if you can't connect the dots between your sermon about hospitality to your vision, that's your job. You take a biblical principle. Why is it important for us to talk about this today? Because this is who God called us to be. This is going to help us point people to a loving Savior. That's our job to do that. Anyway, so Rick Warren says Nehemiah principle. We have to refresh the vision. So first thing I want to say for you guys to write down is this: vision is not a task to do once, but a culture that's constantly being crafted. We'll repeat that. Vision is not a task to do once, but a culture that is constantly being crafted. I'll say it a third time, it's long. Vision is not a task to do once, but a culture that is constantly being crafted. So, just draw a little picture for a second, illustrate my point. Vision is the seed. Culture is the soil. Everything that the oak tree will become is all compacted in this one seed. Isn't that just miraculous? Just but for a second. An orange tree. Everything that the orange tree will become is in this seed. And it will produce a tree that produces other oranges that have seeds in them that will produce other trees. God is a genius. Not to be insulting to him, but what a genius way of doing this. This is the vision you have. You're thinking, in this one thing, all of this can happen. If we were to minister to DC, man, we could touch the highest officials to affect the entire world. The entire world could be different if we did this. We think that it can happen, and it should happen. We should be reaching our police officers and our families and our teachers of the District of Columbia, and it will ripple out literally to the rest of the world. it's compacted in that vision, you know? Laurel, we could do it, Harford County, we could, Columbia, we can do it. It will change everything. But if I took a seed and I sat it right here, what's going to happen?
No.
Nothing. I can even put water on it. I can leave it in the sunlight, and it may like crack and want to sprout something. But if there's no culture for it to thrive in, it will die.
Yeah.
So vision, we often think is a statement. Our vision statement is, we are a church for the rest of us to all come to life. Wow. Wow. Chris, awesome. But if I never put it in a culture that's going to feed it, it's a waste of breath.
Yep.
It's a waste of time. It's just a plaque on the wall that we spent money on is a waste. So vision is not a task to do once. It's a culture that needs to be constantly crafted, consistently crafted. Andy Stanley wrote a book about this idea. I kind of pull a lot from him, and Rick Warren, these guys spoke a ton to it. He wrote a little tiny book, like a little tiny book. It's called Vision Leaks. And the whole idea is, when you cast the vision, if there's not a culture to keep it going, it will leak. It will fall right out. Like we all have buckets, and in the vision bucket, there's a massive hole in the bottom. As soon as you fill it, it's pretty much gone from your people. When he says in the book, when you're tired of saying it, it's just then that your people start getting it, and you feel like, man, I feel like I've said this 1,000 times. You'll see the guy in the front row go, oh, I get it now. And you're like, you're an idiot. I've said this 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But they're just catching it because it leaks out of us. And so in this book, I thought he really gave a couple things, and then I'll move on to a few more ways that we can keep it fresh. He says, you can spot vision leakage by listening for 3 things. And these are genius. Please write these down. You can spot vision leakage by listening for 3 things. Number 1, prayer requests. He says, what people pray for will tell you more than anything else whether they are locked into the vision and if it's a priority of the church. When you are in a leadership meeting, are the only prayer requests for sick people? He says, when I'm in a meeting, I say, whoa, man, is anybody here burdened about the unchurched or for an unsaved friend? Can we pray about that? If the only prayer requests are for sick people and bad things happening, Andy will say, oh man, that's terrible. Okay, we're going to pray about it. Is there anything else we can pray for? Anybody have an unsaved friend that they're worried is going to die and go to hell any day now? Like, you can, if they're not burdened in their prayer about the lost, the vision has seeped out of them. Second one, he says, stories of great things happening in people's lives. If there are no stories, then maybe the vision for life transformation is leaked. So the second indicator of leakage is that there's no stories being told of great things happening. God doing great things in people's lives. And thirdly, he said what people complain about. And this is probably the easiest for us to recognize. If people are complaining about the wrong stuff, then vision is leaking. When they complain about the music or the parking or the church is too big, or there are too many people that I don't know, you can respond, I know, man, God is just blessing us, isn't he? But it's a sign of vision leakage. He says in his book, I'm often tempted to get frustrated with people who don't understand the vision, but I have to ask myself some important questions. What do I need to do to assure that we have a compelling vision as an organization? And what must I do to make it sure that it doesn't leak? If the vision is not communicated in a compelling way, and the organization is not going to be focused. Wherever vision is lacking, the only random activity is left. That's when you wake up and find that you don't like the organization that you're leading. It's our job as leaders to get everyone oriented and focused on our main purpose. And so I love that idea in that when we see it leaking, it's our responsibility to jump in and attack it. And I don't sense this from this room at all, but I do want to say it. We live in such a blaming culture. It's someone else's responsibility. If my leaders would have done this, if that guy would have showed up on time, they wouldn't stop paying their tithes, you know, there's just 1,000 things that we can blame it on. It's our fault, all right? Now, of course, there are things that we can't control with people, but there's a whole lot that we could have controlled before that problem ever happened that we want to blame it on. And so I'm thankful that this room is full of some people who take ownership and responsibility of what we can do. And so if the organization is tilted, if we find some of these things, I have some, it was just, when I was studying for this, I was thinking of the last meeting, and it was all prayer requests about sick people, and I was like, you know, it was like going back and evaluating. I got some work to do. We've got some work to do, and I'm thankful that we're in a room of people that are going to step up and take ownership. Okay, what am I responsible for? How can I go address it? Vision takes a long time, but we've got the tools to do it. Okay, so here, let's get to some practicals of how we do this. How to keep the vision fresh. Number one, measure the measurable. Measure the measurable. Measurable, I don't think is a real word, but
It is.
it is. Oh, thank you.
She's an author, she knows.
I knew that. Measure the measurable. All right. So first thing we do, if we want to step back, if we want to keep it fresh, let's count what needs to be counted to see if we're on track or not. Nehemiah was counting and measuring. He said it was about the time that the walls reached half their height. So there was an end measurement in mind. Think about that. Hey, the wall needs to be 15 feet high. We're at 7. Why did I pick 57 and a half? So, public school math coming to help me out. We're 7.5 right now. We're not there. If they're tired, I can't tell them to quit because we actually need to get to that mark. Our vision to all come to life. That's our goal. And I can't stop now. We got 250, 300, 350 on a Sunday. That's not all.
Amen.
Right. You know?
Amen.
So we can't stop now. We got to keep moving forward.
Yes.
And it wasn't that long ago, many years ago, when we had 150, 100 in a room.
Right.
And I couldn't have stepped back and just say, hey guys, this feels pretty good.
Right.
Right.
This is more than 80% full in our room. It feels good. I can hear you guys singing. You know, like I get paid now. I can get a couple bucks in my pocket.
Amen.
Let's just stop here. This is a gravy train. I'm loving life. No, all come to life. Nehemiah said that there's a spot. He held up his measuring rod. Man, we're about halfway there. I need to do something. I got to step in. And so are we measuring what needs to be measured? Are we counting what needs to be counted? Are lost people getting saved? Are saved people being pastored? Are pastored people being trained? And are trained people being mobilized?
Can you say that again? Real
Yeah,
slow?
say
Sorry,
that.
sorry.
Yeah, that was good.
It's a lot, go there.
Sorry. Are lost people getting saved? Are lost people getting saved? Are saved people being pastored? Are there saved people being pastored? Are pastored people getting trained? Are pastors getting trained? And then are the trained people getting mobilized?
That's good. What do you mean? Oh, let's take the question.
So are we tracking people that are getting saved? Are those saved people being cared for? Are we measuring that? And that's not a feely thing. You can count it. Are those people that are being cared for, are they getting trained? Are they learning their gifts? Are they understanding who they are in Christ? And then are they getting mobilized? Are they finding an opportunity to do those things? Here are the things that we count at Epic. We've pulled some of these things from ARC, found what works for us. There are a couple metrics that we haven't got to yet, but this is what we're at right now. We're counting first-time guests. We're counting return guests. Follow-up connections. And I'll stop on this one. This is actually from the Hillsong Network. So let's say you had 10 first-time guests on a Sunday. You reached out to all 10 of them. Calls, emails, whatever it was. The response back, they counted as 1. So if I sent out 10 emails and I got 2 replies, they counted as 2. And then they do the ratio. You have two responses to 10 first-time guests. So now we start counting these first-time connections. Because you can send them 1,000 things, but if they never respond back to you,
Right.
it was really a waste. Like, I can send carrier pigeons. Like, we really have a conviction that our carrier pigeons are gonna send the first-time guest message that we really thank them for coming, and flies off, and we feel great about ourselves. We did. We sent out 10 carrier pigeons this week. But somebody's gonna be at their house like, this pigeon just won't leave our house. Get this thing out of here, you know? It didn't touch them, it didn't affect them. And so, if I'm sending emails and my people don't check emails, it doesn't count. If I'm making calls and people hate to be called, it doesn't count. If I'm sending texts and I'm not getting replies, it doesn't count. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we have to do the hard work of finding out what works. And so we'll send emails, we'll send texts, we'll do calls, we'll send a handwritten card. If one of those catches and they reply back to us, boom, that's a win. Okay? So, all right, that's enough preaching on that one. First time guests, return guests, follow connections. I'm counting volunteers or people serving. We're counting people in groups or the number of groups. That's where our pastoral care happens at. Counting the dollars, because that's what we do. You know, it's important. And then we're counting attendance just in total. Most of us just count the last two, dollars that were given and people that were there. There's a ton of stuff that we should be counting in between. A lot of bricks in Nehemiah's wall that need to be counted. So measure the measurable. That's going to tell you what's working and what's not working. If people aren't inviting first-time guests, they need to be reminded that hell, or culture's going to hell in a handbasket, quick. People need to know who Jesus is. We need to get back on our horse and start riding. We need to get back there and start talking. So I need to cast a vision for how important salvation is. If people aren't being cared for, I got to spend some time preaching about and talking about, strategizing about getting into a group, getting into small groups, how important it is. Life change happens in relationships. I could preach the best sermon ever, but it's only going to do so much because they're going to retain 10%, maybe 20% of what I say. But when they're sitting in the living room with their friends and somebody says, man, I got a porn addiction and I don't know what to do about it. People lean in and say, man, we're here for you. I've been there. I know what you're talking about. I'm going to pray with you. I'm going to text you tomorrow morning and every morning, find out how you're doing, see where you're struggling. That's where life change happens, right? That's where people get cared for.
Absolutely.
They're not going to say that to me on a Sunday morning. Hey, Pastor Chris, great sermon. Just want to let you know I've been looking at nudie pictures. You know, just want to, can you pray for me? Nobody's going to do that. So groups have to be the place that they be cared for and they find connections with people.
Right.
So if that's not happening, I got work to do. I got to cast vision about getting people into groups. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of
So
sense.
counting, we know where we're at in the process.
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's move on. Now I need to talk about it. Number 2, talk about it. I can't believe I said the phrase nudie pictures.
That was nice, I like it, on video.
We're gonna edit that from the video, please, thank you. Nice touch, I don't know, classic. Keep it
I
classic,
liked
Chris.
it.
Talk about it. Verse 14 again in Nehemiah chapter 4, he says, after I looked things over, so he counted, he looked it over, he got the status, I stood up and I said, so he addressed it, we cannot avoid the issues that are there. We have to address them. Now, are there the right time to address them? It's up to God. But guess what? He called us, we are at the helm, our hands are on the wheel. If we're heading towards rocks, we can't just pray away from the rocks. We have to turn the wheel, right? God always uses a man, a woman. God always uses a person to accomplish the vision that he has. If not, he'd just snap his fingers and things would change. But he said, hey, Noah, I need a boat. Just get to work. You know, Abraham, I want to give you that, so you got to start walking. Moses, I want to free my people, so you got to go back and tell, right? I mean, doesn't he always use a person? So he stood up and I said to the nobles, to the officials, to the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. And so a practical way of doing this, of talking about it, is find stories that demonstrate God's greatness, that demonstrate God's goodness. I love what Pastor said earlier about a woman that got healed in a nursing home. I love that. I appreciate that he shared a story. We were talking about what's going on. This is a win. We're winning. We took one from hell and we populated heaven. We are moving down the track. We are a part of a winning team. Everybody wants to be a part of a winning team.
That's right.
And so you gotta tell them if we're winning or not. If we're not keeping score at a baseball game and people are just running around like Little League, like it doesn't matter if they touch any base, they can go third, second, and back to home. It doesn't. That's cool for Little Leaguers, but as an adult, we want to know if we're winning.
Right.
And so we have to be able to count what needs to be counted and then talk about it. Hey guys, look at the scoreboard. I think it wasn't this year's playoffs, it was a year before. LeBron was like crushing it, I think second or third round, and somebody was just hassling him, just chirping the whole time. And I remember him pointing at the scoreboard, like, just look, like, we got 105 and y'all got 82. Like, he didn't even need to say anything, he just pointed at the scoreboard, like, see y'all in the regular season because you're going to be golfing next week and we're going to move on, you know, like, point to the scoreboard. So we do the same way, to point to the board. Hey, this is what God is doing. This is how good. Remember that the Lord is great, and let me show you how the Lord is great. God came in our church a couple weeks ago. His name's Paul. He's from New York, like Bronx, New York. Firefighter, New York firefighter. And his dad was also, and his grandfather was also. And so this guy's been raised in this culture, this macho New York firefighter culture. And he called God the big guy, called the Bible the good book, you know, like he still does this when he walks into church, like that was his culture. And this kid's 28, maybe 26 or 7, anyway. He's seen some of the most horrific things that any human being could see. As a firefighter, he's gone into the worst situations. Children, elderly people suffering the worst that they could suffer. And so he's got some mental scars that he's walking around with. But in addition to that, his father experienced the same thing and didn't respond the right way. Took his anger and angst out on Paul as he was growing up. And guess what his dad experienced? His grandfather did the same to him, his dad did to him. And so this guy's got he's beat up, he's banged up. And so he comes into church, pretty girl invited him to church, and so he came, which is fine by me, you know. And so he comes into church and he starts talking, yeah, I read the good book, and you know, he talks about the big guy and all these things, and we just love